All right, guys, before we get started here on the final drive, a big thank you to our partner, Microsoft Windows 11, the official operating system of the NFL and the exclusive partner of the LA Chargers. The all-new Windows 11 is here to bring you closer to what you love, like the Chargers and the final drive. Learn about some of the awesome new features of Windows 11 at windows.com. And welcome in to another winning edition of the final drive. Alongside Haley Elwood, I'm Chris Hayre. Raiders, Chargers, and the Bolts put up 21 in the first half. They win at 28-14. They moved to 3-1 atop of the AFC West. And Haley, atop of the AFC early through this first quarter of the season.
Yeah, this is huge for this team. I mean, you look at sort of what's going on in the AFC right now. You look at specifically another divisional throwout that this Chargers team will see this year, the AFC North. I believe they also have 3-1 teams in their division as well. But this was big. This was a really, really big win. We talked about last week, maybe, I know Derwin James kind of downplayed the significance of it a little bit. You and I elaborated on that.
Oh yeah.
I think this one was even bigger in a sense, because not only does it get you a win that gets you 2 games above 500, but it gets you 2-0 in the division. And we talk a lot, and we have talked a lot over the last few years about what's the easiest path to the playoffs. It's winning your division, and to start 2-0 in it is huge. It was just a really, really big win overall, a very complete win. Brandon Staley, I loved, said after the game, the guys had command over the plan, which was very evident kind of as you saw the game unfold and go on. But a very, very big win, and one these guys should feel really, really happy about going in here to Tuesday now.
I look at this first quarter of the season, Haley. You have a new offensive scheme, a new defensive scheme, all new coaches, a lot of new players. You would think this team needs some time to figure things out. So to go 3-1 probably should be 4-0, but 3-1, 2-0 in the AFC West in September, right? This is the first month or two of the season where you're just trying to figure things out. And if you could stack wins while you're ascending, even better. This team has to feel pretty good about themselves entering Cleveland, a Cleveland Browns team who's 3-1, and then the Ravens, who I believe are 3-1 too over the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, look, these teams are this Chargers team is beating good teams. When you look at what they did against Kansas City, what they did against Las Vegas, and then Washington in week 1 is hanging in there, and then obviously Dallas is proving to be a good team themselves, and that was a crazy game the way that sort of ended and all of it, but. Yeah, it is really, really huge. And I think one of the things that you saw last night sort of come together was the running game on both sides of the ball. The fact that they were able to run the ball efficiently and also stop the run efficiently. And Brandon Staley had said after that Kansas City Chiefs game, he's like, you kind of saw the run game sort of come together a bit towards the end of the game. But he goes, remember, this is an entirely new operation when it comes to not only scheme, it's the offensive line, it's the running backs, the tight ends, the receivers, everyone getting on the same page to do their job when it comes to running the football effectively. And you saw that take shape. So when you see little things like that sort of begin to kind of really take shape, we know what obviously Justin Herbert can do and what he has done and pushing the ball downfield and everything like that. But this was big in terms of being able to sort of fine tune things here in this 4th week of the season, quarters of the season, whatever those are anymore, since we have this extra game, but it is really good for them to kind of get that underneath them, and really sky's the limit for what they can do here going forward.
Yeah, you mentioned the running game. Austin Eckler, a career high 114 yards on the ground, 145 total yards, a pair of touchdowns. When that running game is going, and this was a prime example of having a very balanced offensive attack, because coming into this game, Haley, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen were setting the league on fire. They didn't do much of anything in this game, but Justin was still able to get the ball to Eckler and his tight ends. How about the game that Jared Cook had? Yeah. A big reception to start the game, 2 huge 4th down conversions. We'll get into those too. And a touchdown. Jared was playing well against his former team.
Yeah, I think that's kind of one of the beauties of this Chargers offense when you look at the receiving stats of just how last night shook out. And like you said, Mike Williams, 1 reception for 11 yards. That's atypical for what we've seen of him over the last couple of weeks. But the fact that they really spread the ball around in other areas, you got those tight ends involved. Donald Parham had the touchdown. Jared Cook had the touchdown and was a huge factor, like you said, in last night's game. But getting Austin involved back in the passing game, he had that 14-yard reception too. It's just sort of, it felt like one of those games where it was, okay, now it's, your turn or your turn or your turn. They were just sort of spreading it around and really sort of kept the Raiders, I think, on their toes too.
We'll have Fernando Ramirez of Sports Illustrated joining us in just a few minutes to continue to break this one down. I want to go to the end of the first half, Haley. And this was, in my eyes, I think the play of the game. It was by the head coach, Brandon Staley, to throw the challenge flag. Raiders thought they had a first down. They challenge it. It wasn't a first down. You punt it back to the Chargers, and the Chargers score before the half. It's 21-0. That could have been 14-3. It could have been 14-7 with the Raiders getting the ball in the second half. I thought that challenge was absolutely huge. It probably was the deciding factor. It got a little interesting in that third quarter with the Raiders scoring back-to-back touchdowns. But to be up 21-0, so comfortable in the first half, that challenge had a big deal to do with it.
Yeah. So I was standing, I was part of the halftime presentation, as you know. So I was standing in one of the tunnels and I couldn't go out onto the field yet. And I was wondering what was going on because there was like a stoppage in time and I didn't have, I couldn't use my phone and didn't have my notebook and everything like that. And then they reversed it. And then once the Chargers got the ball back, to me, there was no doubt that team was not going to, they were going to score. You just felt it. You knew at that point. And I think, a couple guys talked about that after the game, using momentum is a motivating factor, that there's this belief and trust. And those were two words that were tossed around a lot last night, but not in jest. I mean, they truly, for lack of a better way of saying this, do believe in a belief in this team. And they talked about having momentum and sort of the kind of gutsy calls that Brandon Staley has been making, sort of taking the risks. It adds to that. When you feel, they also talked about sometimes it's a feel thing too. When you feel like you can capitalize on it, go for it. And they felt like with that challenge last night, I don't know if there's anyone else who felt differently, that truly they were going to score after it, because you just felt like at that point, all the momentum was on their side. And like you said, third quarter got a little interesting, been a little interesting for this team over the last few games too.
I was going to say, it was a little interesting at Arrowhead as well. The third quarter is going to be something I'm sure will be a topic of discussion in Costa Mesa. But the identity of this team, I think it's slowly starting to form, Haley, this new identity of we trust our offense. We trust Justin Herbert, and we don't necessarily need to punt, or we don't necessarily need to kick a field goal because we have that much confidence in our offense. All right, we're going to bring in Fernando Ramirez to continue to break this down here on the final drive. Here's Fernando. Another gentleman at SoFi Stadium on Monday night to see the Chargers beat the Raiders. Fernando Ramirez, Sports Illustrated. Fernando, we were just talking about the fact that the first quarter of this season, Chargers still trying to figure things out, still 3-1, 2-0 in the AFC West.
They really should be 4-0, but I mean, we're not going to get into that Cowboys game, but yeah, it seems like Brandon Staley and the guys are really trying to still figure out the defense, how to work the offense. Last night was an indication, though, that the Chargers can beat you several different ways. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams kind of taken away a little bit. It felt like that's what John Gruden and Gus Bradley's defense was going to be. Took those guys away. Okay, I'm going to hit Jared Cook. We're going to establish the run game. Donald Parham, Steven Anderson, get that going a little bit. So it seems like the Chargers are really finding different ways to try and win these games. And then the defense just keeps on coming up clutch in certain situations. Derwin James with the interception, the missed field goal with Carlson because of the Christian Covington sack. Just they're finding different ways in both phases to come out with the victory in this game. And I apologize if my voice is hoarse, but it was a late night yesterday. I didn't pull into my garage till 3:30 in the morning, so it was a long night.
Haley, was Fernando calling defensive plays from the
I think he
sideline?
was. I think he was. I mean, it was very loud in there, as we can all attest. And yeah, it's you got the Tom Brady voice that was happening last week with him.
I wish I had his paycheck.
Yeah. I wish I had his hair. We'll say that. Fernando, I'm going to ask you, this team has gotten off to really, really hot starts over the last few games. And that's something that I think we are maybe kind of, this is new to seeing with this Chargers team. Sometimes they've, in years past have sort of started out slow. What can you say about that? Why do you think this team is sort of just getting really, really off to really, really hot starts really effectively in these games?
It feels like Joe Lombardi he's dialing up very good opening drives, and it feels like that's where the Chargers are filling it out. The thing is, they're balanced in those opening drives. Run, pass. They're mixing it up. They're doing different things with it. So I just really feel like Joe Lombardi's calling, and I feel like he doesn't get enough credit. Everybody's like, oh, Justin Herbert, or if you're LeVar Arrington from FS1, you're going to call him Jordan Herbert. That's what he called him this morning. I couldn't believe that. But slowly but surely, these guys are kind of understanding it. You started off against I think it was in Washington on an opening drive. Against Dallas, you kind of did it as well later, and then against KC, same thing. Once you get that turnover, you kind of bring the ball back down and you score. Well, it took 2 turnovers, but they were able to bring it down. But this is something new that we haven't really seen from this team, and I just feel like Joe Lombardi deserves a lot more credit for the stuff that he's dialing up. And guys have really bought into this offensive scheme. So Justin has a strong command of it. It feels like you're just like waiting. How's Justin doing? Boom, goes right up the field, marches down, scores a touchdown. So it really feels like they have a great grasp of this offense, and Justin really just feels comfortable back there. And obviously the offensive line is performing at a high level, especially when it comes to in those opening moments.
Fernando, the defense, that first quarter, 0 yards, 0 first downs allowed. One first down for the Raiders in that first half. And I tell you this, Chris Harris Jr. is not out there. Justin Jones isn't out there. Kenneth Murray Jr. isn't out there. What do you make of the defense, especially, I think, responding after, the second half of Kansas City to go out on Monday Night Football? And you hear about Derek Carr, 1,200 yards, this explosive Raiders offense. It seemed like they had a plan right away to shut that down.
Brandon Staley, I had some concern when coming into the season. Could Brandon manage to be the head coach and call the defensive scheme? But it seems like it's working. He's doing a great job. He knows exactly what to scheme for, but the defense is really bought in. And I feel like that's kind of the key word to describe the Chargers. These guys have bought in. The guys are really understanding their assignments, where to be. Yes, they have hiccups. You have an Asante Samuel, the pass interference. You have the Derwin James gave up that pass to Henry Ruggs, but you'll take that stuff without them scoring the football. They only managed 14 points yesterday. That's literally nothing when it comes to, like you said, Chris, that high powered offense. But it feels like they've really bought in, and they have their heart and soul back. They have Derwin James back. I don't think people understand how big that is. Yesterday, at the end of the game, Gilbert and I are walking, we're walking to leave the stadium, and I tell him, I'm like, what's interesting? He's like, what? I'm like, Derwin has never been in that same old Charger story, quote unquote, where they give up the game, they give up a lead. I'm like, Derwin hasn't been a part of that, and it feels like he really is the guy that at one point I remember I saw him when they give up those 14 points. He looks at the defense and he kind of claps and he says, "All right, guys, we got to get back into this. Let's do it. Let's settle down and let's play our game." And really, I think it starts with Brandon, but at the same time, it's 33 who really gets it going for these guys, and you could tell. Pass rush was on it. Stopping the run was an emphasis. They were able to do it, and I just feel like the defense really, even with the 14 points allowed, I feel like they played a very, very strong game last night.
Yeah, bending but not breaking is what Joey Bosa had said, and he's like, "Look, we're okay with it as long as we don't break. We're fine with it." I'm going to flip back to the offense for a second because these fourth downs are becoming, to me, and I think everyone, sort of hallmarks of Brandon Staley now coaching this team, making these aggressive decisions. Jared Cook last night said he's been choosing so great. He might as well play some lottery numbers with coach with sort of the decisions that he's been making. What do you make of these fourth down calls? And I will say this too. I loved when Jim Trotter asked Justin Herbert, are you bummed when you guys don't go for it on fourth down? Because it feels like that's kind of what you guys are doing now.
First of all, I love Jim Trotter. I feel like when we have him there at games, he adds a little bit extra oomph to the questions post game. Two, I do want to ask Brandon Staley, with all that money out there, I do want to ask Brandon what he thinks the number should be. But definitely, I think it just shows it that he's confident in his offense. He knows the weapons that he has. He knows that he has Keenan, he has Mike, he has Jared, he has Austin. He has different weapons he can mix and match. But he also knows that at times you have to go for it. There's times where you can't show fear. You have to go for it. And if you don't get it, hey, you didn't get it. But at the same time, they're just showing that they're aggressive with it. And I think most of these fourth downs have led to scoring opportunities. So it's literally what helps that's the difference between putting the nail in the coffin and letting teams come back in and win. And I feel like Brandon Staley knows that. I think Brandon kind of studied this team and said, okay, we have all these weapons. We have one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Why not do this? Why not keep on going with it for it? But it's also smart. On one of these fourth downs, I remember I saw Rashawn Slater at tight end. And I think it was it was Donald Parham at left tackle. And you're like, what are you guys doing? And they ran the fake run, and they threw it a quick pass to Jared Cook. It was another one earlier in the game. And I was like, wow, Rashawn Slater at tight end and Donald Parham at left tackle. That's awesome. But just little things like that really help, and they give that extra oomph to your offense. So I really do feel like Brandon is showing his team, I trust you guys. And I believe in you guys, but also let's get these points. Let's win these games and kind of shut them out. This is the first game that didn't come down. I mean, obviously there was a little bit of a, oh my God, are they going to allow this team to come back? But yeah, exactly. So this really was a game where the Chargers separated themselves from the opposing team. And you're kind of like, okay, there it is. There's the separation. Can you keep on doing that consistently? And let us get our stories in and not have to change them halfway through the fourth quarter. So it definitely is a game changer when Staley goes for it on fourth down.
Staley helping out the beats as well as winning football games for the Chargers. I love
especially with that weather delay last night.
Yeah, it was a late one. As you
I know. Said. We didn't. Have we got any lightning jokes in yet? We're like 20 minutes into this podcast.
Hey, Joey had a good, and I saw Haley tweeted out, hey, I can't wait for these weather jokes. And Joey's like, well, I guess it was an indication or something like that. The lightning struck or whatever. And I'm like, there it is. I'm like, that is awesome.
Fernando, I want to get your opinion on this. I go back to just the end of last year, right? Justin Herbert won his last 3 starts in the division. He's 5-0 in the AFC West in his last 5 games. I know that those games didn't mean anything in terms of playoff positioning and even getting into the playoffs, but how much confidence do you think it gave him coming into this year that we stacked some wins at the end of last year? We know momentum doesn't carry over, but I can do this. I can beat the Raiders. I can beat the Broncos. I can beat the Chiefs on the road. How much do you think that really helped him going into his second year? Because right now the Chargers are 2-0 for the first time in the AFC West since 2012.
Yeah, no, I don't think any of us were around the organization around then. Haley, you weren't around it, were you yet?
No? 14, which okay. They're also 3-1 though for the first time since 2014.
There you go. You know what's funny? Last night they won their first Monday Night Football game since 2013. That was actually my first game interning, that Monday night game against the Colts. So I kind of sat back and I was like, oh wow, that's a really long time. 1, 2. I'm not 21 like I was when I started interning. Wow, times have really changed. But yeah, no, definitely. What was your question again? My bad. It was the. Sorry, I kind of got off on a.
No, it's good because Keenan Allen was interning that year too. I think he was a rookie.
Yeah, exactly. 2 touchdowns, and he kind of told us after the game, "Hey, this is my coming out party," and you're like, "Oh, okay, cool, thank you, congratulations."
No, Fernando, I was just asking you about just the fact that Justin Herbert was able to win division games at the end of last year, and I just think that gave maybe him and some of the other guys around him even more confidence in number 10.
And it's what they did, Chris. It was come from behind wins. It was final field goals. It was having to drive the team down the field. There was the game against, I mean, I know it wasn't a divisional game, but there was that game against Atlanta where he throws it to Keenan, it's intercepted, and you're kind of like, oh, dude, are you really going to lose this game? And then I think Michael Davis makes an interception. The team gets hyped. They drive down. I think Michael Badgley hits a field goal to win the game, and you're like, okay, there's a little bit of a confidence booster. But then you go into Las Vegas, and the famous I was in game where he drives the team back up the field and game-winning drives. It really changed the momentum of Justin Herbert, because earlier in the season, you knew they blew the couple of leads on Monday Night Football. They blew the lead against Tampa, against Denver. This kind of gave him that boost that he needed. Okay, I can come from behind. I can win these games. And I really do feel like he took that and he was like, okay, this is something I can build on for next season. I thought those last 4 games were so critical for him. It was kind of like like Steph Curry he's 0 for 9 from 3-point land. He needs to see one go in for him to be okay. That's what Justin had at the end of that season, is that he saw a couple of buckets go in and he's like, all right, I can do this. I can come from behind. I can make the correct plays. And I really thought that last year was a perfect season for Justin to grow, to see exactly what he needed. And you're seeing it now. Now he feels the confidence. Now the team is confident around him. And it really, I feel like those last 4 games, I know people were like, oh, well, we could have gotten better draft position. But I'm
glad they didn't, right?
Exactly. But what it got your rookie quarterback is something that you'll never be able to. It got him that confidence that he really needed. And I feel like that's why those last 4 games were special for Justin Herbert.
Yeah, this team has talked a lot. And I remember too, at the end of last season, just stacking, like, just let's get one, like you said, get one, go from there. And Herbert even talked last night. One of the things he loves about this team is that they never look too far back or too far ahead. They sort of just focus on the moment and then move on to what's next. Last one for me, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention Sergio Rojas, who tweeted at both Chris and me last night saying, please make sure to bring up stellar tackling by the defense on this podcast. I think I go back to after the Dallas game where Joey specifically had said, we did not tackle well in that game. And we saw that because Dallas was able to run all over. Run defense really shored up in this game. What can you say, Fernando, just about the effort that they put into wrapping up, getting to the ball, all hats getting there?
I really think it's been a team effort. And that Dallas game, I feel like these guys were still figuring out the defense. I really do feel like they were still because a lot of these guys didn't play during preseason. The defensive line didn't play. A lot of the secondary didn't play. So they're still figuring it out. But I've really been impressed with the defensive line, the team effort that the defensive line has had. Jerry Tillery has really impressed me these last 2 games. Christian Covington is coming out. Even Forrest Merrill in one of those got a pretty good tackle yesterday. So a lot of these guys are Joe Gaziano. A lot of these guys are really putting in an effort. The thing is, they're team tackling. That's what they did last night. They team tackled against the Antonio Gibson that first weekend. In one of those, he got loose for 25 yards. They were trying to gang tackle him, but they weren't able to grab him and bring him down. That's when he got loose. Well, last night, they weren't doing that. They were wrapping these guys up. And it really helped having Drew Tranquill. Drew Tranquill has really, I think, improved. He helped yesterday. Derwin was coming into the box. He was helping out. And that's what I felt like kind of hurt them against the Cowboys, that Derwin was in the slot, so he couldn't really do his thing where he's running around, he's doing different things. But the gang tackling last night was honestly some of the best that I've seen in a while from this team. And it really helps when everybody's bought in, everybody's doing it together. So this defense literally last night had one of their best games, and it was against one of the hottest offenses in the NFL. So to see what they did, to hold them to less than, I think it was 200 yards, that was pretty impressive. And to not let just Josh Jacobs or any of these guys get loose was very impressive. So tip the hat to the defense for that gang tackling. And that definitely was a very impressive performance from them.
Shout out to Sergio for the question.
There you go.
Hey,
it wasn't really a question, Chris. It was, hey, you guys have to do this. So it was more of a command.
Sorry. It was more of like, this is what it's going to be. I like that even more. Hey, it's a great segue to my last question for you. We push it forward to the Browns, and you talk about a rushing attack. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. What do the Chargers need to do? This is a short week too, coming off a big kind of a emotional AFC West win, back-to-back division wins, but you have a Cleveland Browns team coming into SoFi Stadium 3-1, And you talk about stopping the run. That's got to be priority A.
Yeah, no, it has to be a quick brisket week. So obviously, Justin has to be fast with it. I know it takes a while.
I think maybe just
exactly
some
sandwiches. Exactly. No, and honestly, I've done one. It took me about 12 hours to make one. I bought a smoker because of Justin and because of Gabe and those guys. So I bought a smoker. Took me 12 hours to cook that brisket. I was like, okay. When I ate it, it was like, okay, that was all worth it. So I definitely know how that goes. But you have to be able to gang tackle next weekend as well. You're not going to have Justin Jones, like you mentioned. You're not going to have Kenneth Murray. Hopefully you have Chris Harris Jr. back. That would really help. But honestly, Tavon Campbell stepped up in this defense a lot for these guys. 2 turnovers last week. Yesterday, he was on a lot of the slot guys, so he did a good job. But I feel like that's what they need to do. Gang tackling is gonna be key. You kind of want to make Baker Mayfield beat you next week just because of the run. You don't want the run game to gash you the way it did against Dallas. So I kind of feel like you kind of want to let Baker Mayfield kind of beat you in a sense. There's no Jarvis Landry, who's one of his favorite targets. So, but they still, man, that offensive line is good. They have a good offensive line. They have Hooper at tight end. They have Njoku also. They have Odell Beckham Jr. who came back from injury. But the gang tackling is going to be key next week, especially because, like you said, either one of these running backs can really hurt you and gash you. So the Chargers are going to have to be on their P's and Q's when it comes to Cleveland, because Cleveland's no joke. They're one of the top teams in the AFC for a reason. And last week they won ugly, 14-11 against Minnesota Vikings. So it's one of those things where I feel like they can play up there with the Chiefs, but they can also be in those ugly games. So it's gonna be a pretty good matchup going into a short week, like you said.
Yeah, the next 2 weeks you got the Browns and Ravens before your bye week. So this is the tough part of the Chargers schedule. If you can get out of there going into your bye week with 4 or 5 wins, I think this team would take
and against 2 of the top teams in the AFC North. So these are going to be teams that you could see in the playoffs. So this is going to be a good indication of where you're at.
Yeah, just really quick. I listen to SiriusXM NFL radio a lot, and Pat Kerwin calls these games wild card games because they're games that are in your conference, not in your division, but could have a lot to deal with when it comes to standings at the end of the year. And 2 of them are now up on this slate.
Exactly. And you know what it is in Baltimore. You know how Baltimore it is out there. So it's going to be a good indication of where you're at. It's going to show this team a lot. So, but like Brandon said, last week, Monday was important because it showed what we could do after a big win. A lot of people thought, hey, maybe they could lay an egg. No, they came out, they played their defense, their offense. They played well, and they showed that they could win after a big win. So can they win after a big win? So that's going to be the important part right there.
Yeah, you get a short week too. That's the little wrinkle into this one as well. Hey, Fernando Ramirez, Compass on the beat. I think that if you're a Chargers fan, there's no shortage of great podcasts out there, and you guys are certainly one of them. Tell us when you post, and I'm sure you have a post-game pod that you've either taped or about to tape.
We actually taped it last night. We were walking. We're in the stadium sitting there, and Jeff Miller's walking by. I'm like, oh, we have the great Jeff Miller, and he's like, no, leave me out of it. And then Gilbert's like, I think he's trying to go home, and I'm like, no, come over here. So we record post-game. No matter what time it is, it was like 12:30 last night when we recorded it. Obviously, the preview show on Thursdays, and then the regular episode where we kind of dive into more stuff is on Wednesday. We're going to try and have you guys on. The thing is that we haven't had guests. Tuesday's our only day off, and it's kind of hard to book people. So I'm like, hey, right now I told Gilbert, let's relax until the bye week. And then after that, we'll come together and try and grab people. So it's been kind of tough with the season going on, but definitely we've had a lot of fun with it. And honestly, like this week we talked about, I asked Gilbert, would you go on this roller coaster? And he's like, no. Like, I'm like, okay, would you rather do that or take 1,000 paintballs to the body? And he's like, yeah, right. I'll take the roller coaster. So it's just us being goofy, doing dumb stuff. And it's just a lot of fun. So we definitely have a lot of fun with it.
Haley and Avery on the waiting list for Compass on the beat.
Yeah, no, definitely. No. We're trying to, like I said, we're just trying to figure everything out. And if my co-host would stop being a little bit of a diva, we could get things going. But that's just what happens when you're in showbiz, I guess.
It's showbiz, baby.
Yeah,
It's showbiz, baby. Well, Compass on the Beat. It's a great pod. Check it out. Fernando
Appreciate
Ramirez. Really appreciate the insight, man. Especially doing a pod at 12:30 in the morning and then getting up early with us. That's dedication. I think we're all dragging a little bit today, but a win makes it a little bit better. And
Jeff Miller said he was not going to
to.
go on a run today because he was going to sleep in. I didn't know Jeff Miller knew what sleeping in was. So I'm very surprised by that. I thought he would just go on his run normally, and he's like, nope, gonna sleep in. I was like, okay.
I bet he ran. Anyway.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
bet too.
Yeah.
I bet he did
Changed
too.
his mind this morning.
Exactly.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. For Haley Elwood and Fernando Ramirez, I'm Chris Hayre. Thank you for listening or watching The Final Drive, presented by Windows 11.